The applause was thunderous, and the judges were amazed when 18-year-old Marcus Thompson wheeled onto Ellen's stage and revealed his latest masterpiece. But when he quietly said, "I painted this with my friend's hands because mine don't work the way they used to," the celebration stopped cold. It was supposed to be the highlight of Ellen's Young Artist Showcase, a monthly segment celebrating creativity and talent among teenagers and young adults. The Ellen DeGeneres show studio buzzed with excitement as Ellen wore her signature blue blazer, moving between easels, displaying incredible artwork from aspiring artists across the country. 18-year-old Marcus Thompson from Denver sat in his custom wheelchair in front of his painting, a breathtaking landscape that seemed to capture light itself. He had short brown hair and kind green eyes that held both wisdom and pain, the kind that comes from learning life's hardest lessons far too young. The painting before him was so detailed and emotionally powerful that it had moved 3 judges to tears during the competition. During the pre-show setup, Ellen had been struck by Marcus's quiet confidence and the way other contestants gathered around him, not out of pity, but genuine admiration. There was something magnetic about his presence, a warmth that drew people in despite the obvious challenges his condition presented. His friends Sarah and Jake had accompanied him from Denver, constantly at his side but never treating him as fragile. The art competition had been fierce, with young artists from 16 to 25 showcasing everything from sculptures to digital art. Marcus's oil painting, titled Strength and Stillness, depicted a mountain sunrise with incredible detail and emotional depth that spoke of hours upon hours of patient work. Ellen had declared him the winner unanimously, praising his extraordinary vision and technical mastery. As confetti fell and music played, Ellen approached Marcus with the winner's check and her usual celebratory energy. "Marcus, this painting is absolutely incredible. You're going home with $5,000 and a full scholarship to the art institute of your choice." Ellen's smile was radiant as she knelt beside his wheelchair. Marcus accepted the check with a grateful smile, but there was something in his expression that didn't match the festive atmosphere around him. Instead of pure joy, his face showed a complex mixture of gratitude and something that looked almost like guilt. "Thank you so much, Ellen," he said, his voice soft but steady. Ellen noticed immediately that something was weighing on him. "Marcus, you just created something that left grown adults speechless," she said gently, her host instincts picking up on his subdued energy. "This should be one of the happiest moments of your life. What's going on?" Marcus glanced at his friends Sarah and Jake, who were standing nearby with encouraging smiles, then back at Ellen. "Can I tell you something that might sound strange?" he asked, his voice gaining strength as he prepared to share something clearly important to him. Ellen nodded, sensing they were about to venture into deeper territory. "This painting," Marcus said, gesturing to the stunning landscape beside him, "I didn't paint it alone." Ellen's eyebrows raised slightly, wondering if he was about to reveal some kind of collaboration she wasn't aware of. "What do you mean, honey?" Marcus took a deep breath, his hands resting motionless in his lap. "My hands don't work the way they used to," he said simply, as if stating a basic fact. "I have muscular dystrophy, and my fine motor control has been deteriorating for years. I can't hold a brush steady anymore." The words hit Ellen like a physical blow, and she felt her professional composure begin to shift. Here was a young man who had just won an art competition, and he was revealing that he couldn't actually paint in the traditional sense. The implications were staggering. Ellen immediately signaled to her production team to pause the celebration music. "Hold on, everyone," she called out, her voice carrying a new gravity that silenced the studio. The festive sounds died away, leaving only the hum of cameras and the collective attention of everyone present. "Marcus," Ellen said softly, now sitting on a nearby stool to be at his eye level, "help me understand. How did you create this masterpiece?" Marcus looked at his friends again, and this time Sarah stepped forward, her own eyes filling with tears. "He directs us," Sarah said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Marcus sees the painting in his mind, every detail, every brushstroke, and he tells us exactly where to place our hands, how much pressure to use, which colors to blend." Ellen's mouth fell open as the magnitude of what she was hearing sank in. Jake nodded, stepping closer. "He's like a conductor, but instead of music, he's conducting art. He'll say things like, Sarah, take the blue and make 3 small strokes here, or Jake, blend that edge with your pinky, very gently. Ellen stared at the painting with new eyes, understanding now that she was looking at something unprecedented. So this entire painting, Ellen said slowly, her voice filled with awe, was created through your vision and their hands? Marcus nodded, tears beginning to form in his eyes. It takes us about 10 times longer than normal, but we've learned to work together like one person. Ellen stood up and addressed the studio audience, many of whom were now crying openly. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not just looking at a painting here. We're looking at the most incredible collaboration between friendship and art that I've ever witnessed. The audience responded with spontaneous applause that felt different from typical television clapping. Marcus, Ellen said, turning back to him, I need to know your story. When did this start? How did you learn to create art this way? Marcus wiped his eyes and looked directly at Ellen, ready to share the full truth. I was 7 when I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. Marcus began, his voice steady despite his tears. The doctor said I'd progressively lose muscle control, and by the time I was a teenager, I might not be able to use my hands for detailed work. Ellen's heart broke as she imagined a 7-year-old receiving such devastating news. But the worst part wasn't losing my strength, Marcus continued. It was watching my dad blame himself every single day. Ellen's expression shifted to one of deep concern as Marcus revealed this family dimension to his story. You see, when I was 5, my dad was teaching me to ride my bike in our driveway, Marcus said, his voice catching slightly. He was running beside me, holding the seat, when he tripped and fell. The bike veered into the street just as a car was coming. Ellen's hand went to her heart as she realized where this story was heading. The driver hit the brakes but couldn't stop in time, Marcus continued, now crying openly. I wasn't hurt badly in the crash, just some bruises and a concussion, but something about the trauma triggered the onset of my muscular dystrophy. The doctors said it might have happened anyway, but the stress and trauma accelerated it. Ellen was now crying herself, understanding the full weight of what this family had endured. Marcus, that was an accident. You know that wasn't your father's fault, right? Marcus nodded, but his next words revealed the ongoing pain. I know it wasn't his fault, but he doesn't know that, Marcus said. Every day for 13 years, he's carried the guilt of thinking he caused my condition. He works 2 jobs to pay for my treatments and equipment, and he won't let himself enjoy anything because he thinks he doesn't deserve to be happy. Ellen felt a familiar determination building inside her as she grasped the full scope of this family's struggle. Where is your father today, Marcus? She asked gently. Marcus looked toward the audience, and Ellen followed his gaze to see a man in his 40s sitting alone, tears streaming down his face. Dad, Marcus called out, and the man stood up slowly. This is my dad, Robert Thompson. He drove here from Denver but didn't want to sit in the front row because he said he didn't deserve to celebrate my success. Ellen's heart shattered as she watched this father's obvious pain and self-imposed isolation. Ellen made a decision that would define this moment forever. Mr. Thompson, would you please come down here? She called out, her voice carrying across the studio with gentle authority. Robert hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, but Marcus encouraged him with a nod. As Robert made his way to the stage area, Ellen could see the weight he carried in every step. When he reached them, Ellen gently took his hand. Mr. Thompson, your son just told me about the accident when he was 5. I need you to look at this painting and tell me what you see. Robert looked at the stunning landscape, then at his son, then back at Ellen. I see the most beautiful thing my son has ever created, he said, his voice broken with emotion. But I also see what he could have painted with his own hands if I hadn't failed him that day. Ellen's response was immediate and firm. Mr. Thompson, what I see is a masterpiece that exists because of love, collaboration, and the incredible young man you raised. Your son didn't create this despite what happened. He created it because of who you taught him to be. Robert broke down completely at these words. Marcus, Ellen said, turning to address both father and son, I want your dad to understand something. This painting isn't beautiful in spite of your condition. It's beautiful because of the person you've become, the friendships you've built, and the love your father gave you every single day for 18 years. Ellen turned to the cameras and made an announcement that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do something unprecedented today. We're going to commission Marcus to create a permanent mural for our studio, and we're going to document the entire process. I want the world to see what collaboration looks like, what love looks like, and what happens when we stop focusing on what we've lost and start celebrating what we've found." The audience erupted in applause, but Ellen wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and made a call right there on stage. "I'm calling the Denver Art Museum," she announced. "They're going to have a permanent Marcus Thompson gallery, featuring not just his art, but the story of how community and friendship can create beauty beyond what any individual could achieve alone." Sarah and Jake, who had been emotional observers throughout this exchange, stepped forward to join the group. "Ellen," Sarah said, "you should know that working with Marcus has taught us more about art than any class ever could. He sees things we never would have noticed." Jake nodded in agreement, adding, "He doesn't just direct us, he's taught us to see the world differently." Ellen arranged for the Thompson family to stay in Los Angeles for a week while Marcus worked on his studio mural. Every day, cameras documented the process of Marcus directing Sarah and Jake through the creation of a stunning piece that would become the backdrop for future shows. Robert watched every session, slowly beginning to understand that his son's gift wasn't diminished by his condition. It was transformed into something entirely unique. But the most powerful moment came when Marcus insisted that his father add the final brushstroke to the mural. "Dad, you've been part of every piece of art I've ever created," Marcus said. "Your love guided my vision, just like my vision guides their hands." With trembling hands, Robert made the final mark on a corner of the mural, a small sun that completed the entire composition. The episode featuring Marcus's story became one of Ellen's most viewed and shared segments, not because of the drama, but because viewers witnessed the power of redefining ability and success. Ellen received thousands of letters from people with disabilities and their families, thanking her for showing that limitation could become innovation. 6 months later, Marcus's collaborative art method had inspired art therapy programs in hospitals across the country. His technique of conducted painting became a recognized form of collaborative art, taught in art schools and used in rehabilitation centers to help people with various physical limitations continue creating. The Denver Art Museum's Marcus Thompson Gallery opened a year later, featuring not just his paintings but interactive stations where visitors could experience conducted art themselves. Robert Thompson spoke at the opening, no longer carrying the weight of guilt, but instead celebrating the journey that had led his son to discover new ways of creating beauty. Ellen established the Hands Together Foundation, providing equipment and training for collaborative art programs in schools and medical facilities. Marcus became the foundation's first ambassador, traveling with Sarah and Jake to teach their technique to other young artists facing physical challenges. The studio mural Marcus created still serves as the backdrop for Ellen's show, but it's more than decoration. It's a daily reminder that creativity finds a way, that love multiplies when shared, and that sometimes the most beautiful art comes not from perfect technique, but from perfect collaboration. Marcus graduated from art school with highest honors, pioneering new methods of collaborative creation that are now studied worldwide. Sarah and Jake became professional art therapists, specializing in working with people who have lost traditional motor functions but not their creative vision. Robert Thompson now volunteers with families of newly diagnosed children, sharing his journey from guilt to gratitude and helping other parents understand that their child's worth isn't measured by what they've lost, but by who they choose to become. He keeps a small version of Marcus's first collaborative painting in his office, signed not just by Marcus but by all 4 people who made it possible: Marcus, Sarah, Jake, and the father whose love never wavered. The lesson Marcus taught Ellen and millions of viewers transcends art or disability. It's about redefining what success looks like, understanding that limitation can become innovation, and recognizing that the most beautiful creations often come from the most unexpected collaborations. Years later, when people ask Marcus about overcoming his disability, he gently corrects them. "I didn't overcome anything," he says. "I discovered that art isn't about what your hands can do, it's about what your heart can envision and what love can make possible when we work together." Because that's what love looks like when it refuses to accept limitation. That's what creativity sounds like when it finds new ways to express itself. And that's what happens when a young man teaches the world that the most powerful brushstrokes aren't made by individual hands, but by hearts working in perfect harmony.